Hello again, this is Matzi, and this is part 2 of our tutorial with building modular structures in Smile Game Builder. In part 1, we showed some of the basic objects that make up a modular structure and how to build the base of a house using these objects, as we can see here. In this part, we'll be looking at adding elements into the house and then putting the flooring on top. So we're going to jump right in by first taking the house we built from the last tutorial. I'm going to copy that and paste it into our part 2 section. As a reminder, you can see I copy and pasted the house, but the stairs and the tiles didn't go with it. So before I get started on building the internals of the house, I must first put the tiles in place and get their elevation set. And then I'll go and get myself some stairs. And now we're ready to go. As you can see, it's pretty easy to add things inside of this house, although occasionally I had to place the object outside of the house and drag it in, as you can kind of see here in this video. Overall, not too complicated, and I end up with a relatively decent looking house interior. We have now a fully built out structure in our original house. Matches the demo house I had pre-built before this tutorial started. And now we need to add flooring on top. So to do this, we're going to take a quick look at the flooring we'll be using. Here we are with our flooring. We first start with wood floor level 2. This is the flooring piece that will get used for most of the open areas in the house. This is intended for the player to walk underneath and walk on top, which is why other objects can be placed onto this object, and we have elevation settings with allow underpass. Then we have wood floor level 2 blocked. This is specifically used to place on top of other objects we don't want the player to walk through. The player can still walk on top of these objects, but they won't be able to walk underneath. Finally, we do end up using wood floor level 1 to place at the top of the stairs on the tile set so that it looks like a normal floor rather than a piece of wood that doesn't match the rest of the flooring. Now we're going to go build our floor. You can start adding flooring in one of two ways. You could either start by putting the wood floor level 2 blocked on top of all the objects that you don't want the player to walk through, or you could put the base flooring around all of the objects that the player can actually walk underneath. For my example, I'm going to start by putting all the blocked tile objects on top first. So we're going to go to wood floor level 2 blocked, and I will start by painting over all of my objects. Now you can see that sometimes the Smile Game Builder editor does not want to cooperate, so I can't seem to get a pencil icon over some of these objects, or it places it in weird spots. This does seem to be a thing with trying to do this modular object structure. I know Smile Game Builder isn't necessarily designed for this level of complexity with objects, and so it's just one of the things that you have to be aware of when trying to build out a structure like this. Now that I have all the blocked flooring in place, I'm going to place the wood floor level 2 in most of the rest of the places. There is one caveat, which will be the doorway, which I will get to in a second. Okay, we now have most of our flooring placed. However, I left this one spot open where I need to put a doorway. So here is the caveat. If I wanted a doorway with a door in it, or a doorway that was open but stylistically looks like a doorway, I run into some problems with trying to allow the player to walk underneath and on top of that object. I cover this more in depth in the problems playground, but to quickly show an example, if I had a doorway level 1, which is like so. In order to get the player to walk through it, I would need to place wood floor level 2 on top, which results in the doorway showing on top. So what I did instead is I made this wood floor level 1 topped. And wood floor level 1 topped is set up exactly the same as wood floor level 2, which means it has allow underpass and the setting to let objects get placed on top. When I place that object, and when I place a wood floor level 2 on top, you can see it works just fine. So now that I have those two objects, I will just move them into my house. Let me get this rotated the right way, like so. And then I can just select these objects and put them in spot. Let me fix that rotation. Okay. Now we have our level 1 floor, as you can see on the left, and we have our level 2 floor covering on top. Let's take a look at a demo of this working. So here we are again on the outside of our house. As before, I cannot walk through these walls. They are blocked properly. And I can walk inside my house and see the exact layout I showed in the original demo. You can see I can't walk into any of these objects inside the kitchen or any of the inner walls. Those are properly blocked. And I can still walk through the doorway and into the study. Now we're going to go upstairs. And as you can see, I have the second floor, and I should be able to walk basically anywhere on this floor without either falling through or getting blocked by any of these pieces of flooring. Now you might note I forgot to add the flooring on top of the stairs, so let's go do that now and then wrap up. So one piece I forgot to add was this one spot needs a floor that matches the rest of the style. So I'm just going to go and get wood floor level 1 and place it on top. And this is one of the interesting things about building modular houses on top of tile elevation. Even though I have settings specifically with level 1 and level 2 set with the intent of being ground level and second level and so on, the introduction of a tile offsets that setting. So I have to put a wood floor level 1 here. Otherwise, if I try to put a wood floor level 2, you'll see it will appear on top of that. And this might make it possible to add additional levels, although given the complexities of layering on objects, I'm not yet sure how that would work. 2 levels is certainly doable. 3 levels might be a little bit more complicated. As we wrap up, I wanted to discuss some considerations around the design of houses using modular objects. First off, what I'm using in this demo is a bit larger, I think, than what you may want to use for most of your houses. And to give you some perspective, each one of these tiles that represent a Smile Game Builder tile is 4 by 4 by 4 feet, which is 4 cubic feet, I suppose. And that translates roughly to 120 some odd centimeters cubed. So if you look at the size of this space, this is a pretty large space. This is almost mansion level in its size. Generally speaking, I think the houses that would get made with these objects are going to be half the size that you see here. However, I wanted to demonstrate some of the complexities with working with these objects, and to do that, I needed more space and a little bit more diversity in the setup. That means the smaller you make the house, the easier it will be to work with some of the quirks with layering objects on top of one another. One big consideration is when you put the flooring on top, it becomes much harder to work with any of the objects that are on the first floor. And by example, looking at this house on the right, I do know that there is a layout inside, but sometimes I might have to guess where certain walls are that I want to work with. And as you can see here, even with my demonstration, trying to move a piece of floor off and then move a piece of floor back on, it can actually get quite complicated. And I don't always know what I'm picking up when I try and click and drag. There we go. Fix it. So when designing your layouts for houses, it might be important to ensure you have some reference to what is in the house, because when you want to go later, you're going to have to do some selecting and dragging of a number of objects in order to dig in and make changes. Another thing that might help is just making the walls that you put in the first floor match what's on the second floor. In this case, I wanted to show that you could put walls with floors on top just fine. However, it might make sense to build walls that are the same on the first and second floor, and to do that, you could use some objects that span both floors, and then you'd be easily able to organize or find what's in a room on either level. The other thing is that the doorways that we place actually work better if they are not matched between the floors. That means if I have a doorway on the first floor here, on the second floor I would prefer to have a wall on top. This is specifically if you want to do things like doors that open or close, because the second you want to animate something, it becomes harder to block or unblock them properly with the player walking around underneath or on top. Finally, I haven't tested this thoroughly, but I know that if I were to make an object on the first floor that I wanted to move around like a human walking around, it essentially negates the ability to make the player walk on top up here. This is something I'll talk more about when we get to the problems playground section of the tutorial. However, suffice it to say that if I were to have an object on the first floor that I need an advanced event associated with, the object changes its behavior pattern and how it works with other objects. And so if I do have an object here that has advanced event associated, it will appear on top of any flooring that says other objects can be placed on top. That pretty much makes it impossible to let the player walk on top of any movable object that's on the first floor. There may be a way to get this to work. One option might be to have a very limited track that the event can walk on, and then just put them underneath something the player can't walk through, such as a wall or just a section of blocked off area that allows the event to walk around but not interact with anything on the second floor. As it is, this still does work pretty well as long as you don't need any complicated interactions on the first floor. And when we get into part 3 of the tutorial, we'll start looking at how we actually get the player to interact with the objects on both the first and second floor without causing weird changes to the object structure. This is the end of part 2 of my tutorial. As I noted in the first video, if you want more information on how to use Smile Game Builder in general, there are a plethora of tutorials that Companion Wulf made. I'll put his link to his videos in my description below, as well as a link to his blog, Smile Game Builder Athenaeum, which has plenty of references to other useful resources in Smile Game Builder. You can also check out my website, modsy.com, where I have the documented information around these tutorials and my investigations into doing modular structured objects. Keep a lookout for part 3 of my tutorial, where I will be looking at finishing the second floor and adding events. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.